Hey guys, tonight, we tiptoe into something that sounds like a fairy tale, but definitely isn't. Imagine waking up in a quiet medieval village and hearing that someone's put your cat on trial. Not metaphorically, not as a joke, but with scrolls, judges, and firewood waiting just outside the courtroom. It's late autumn, and mist curls through the cobbled streets. You walk past low stone walls, bread still warm in cottage windows, when you hear it, the rustle of parchment, the clink of chains, and the unmistakable sound of a cat meowing. But not from a rooftop, no, from inside the courthouse, and the cat, it's not some stray. It's that plump orange fluff ball you saw stretched across the bakery windowsill yesterday. Someone, maybe even someone you know, accused it of consorting with the devil. And now a trial is underway. You probably won't survive this timeline, to be honest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself a few rows back, seated on a rough bench hay, crunching under your boots. The judge is a priest, with smudged ink on his sleeves. There's a scroll on the table listing charges, and your eyes skim the words, summoning storms, bewitching livestock, whispering in a dead tongue. To be clear, we're still talking about the cat. His name is Gaston, fluffy orange, partial to fish heads. But someone swore on their soul that they saw him leap into the rafters during the storm eyes glowing green. And wouldn't you know it, the wind took the roof off the church that night. It sounds absurd now, but back then they believed it. The idea of animals as moral agents capable of choosing evil wasn't fringe thinking. It was law. French, Swiss, German, even English courts recorded these trials. And cats, especially black ones, were thought to be extensions of witches. Or worse, the devil himself wearing a fuzzy coat. The priest announces the charges. A hush falls. Gaston blinks. You want to laugh, but no one else is. The baker's wife clutches a rosary. Someone spits. The candlelight dances like nervous fingers on stone walls. Mainstream historical records do exist. Trial transcripts, scribbled judgments, and executions carried out on creatures whose greatest crime was being mysterious and nocturnal. Sometimes it was about real misfortune, a plague outbreak, a failed crop, a stillborn calf, and fear needs a target. Cats were agile, aloof, impossible to control. They became perfect vessels for blame. But not every trial was a simple exorcism of public panic. You watch as the village priest questions a witness, a shepherd who says he saw Gaston chanting on the roof of the chapel. Chanting apparently meant meowing during evening vespers. Another swore the cat scratched a crucifix into the dirt, which if you squint, looks suspiciously like the time he buried a chicken bone. Historians still argue whether these accounts were literal beliefs or allegorical scapegoating. Some think the clergy exploited fear to reinforce control. Others argue villagers truly believed cats were conduits of darkness. The line between myth and policy blurred under candlelight and desperation. And you sit there as Gaston is sentenced to burn at the stake come morning. He's carted off, tail swishing, with no idea he's made history. Again. Later that night, in a tavern thick with smoke, someone jokes about putting the rooster on trial next for crowing at ghosts. A few villagers chuckle. One says the rooster does have shifty eyes. And you suddenly understand how quickly suspicion spreads, how one frightened whisper, a single sneeze in the wrong direction, and a house cat becomes an omen. That night, as you lie in your straw mattress, the howls of feral cats echo through the fields. Somewhere far from the square, Gaston's cousin slinks through the shadows, glowing eyes fixed on the moon, watching, waiting. Tomorrow the trial resumes for someone else's cat. You wake to smoke on the wind. It curls through the shutters, soft and sour, drifting down your throat before your eyes are even open. The village is quieter than usual. No morning cackles, no clatter of buckets. Just that lingering scent of ash and something furrier. You step outside. There's a scorch mark in the square. The woodpile is blackened. A few embers twitch in the cold wind. Gaston, of course, is gone. What's left of him is silence. You pass the baker's shop. Her shutters are drawn. The bread didn't rise today. And it isn't over. No one believes it is. Not really. You hear whispers now, flitting from porch to porch, like birds avoiding something just overhead. Whispers that someone's cow stopped giving milk, that a child had night terrors, that a dog barked at a wall for 5 hours straight, and someone saw a black cat running toward the church bell tower. You look down at your feet. There's a paw print in the mud, deep, deliberate, as if the cat wanted to be seen. This is how the next trial begins, not in a courtroom, but in the minds of the anxious. You're watching the gears turn. Logic isn't welcome here. Fear sits in the front pew now. Black cats bear the brunt of this growing hysteria, not just because they're sleek or stealthy, but because their color, even centuries ago, had connotations death mystery nightfall. You remember a rhyme the children whispered near the river. Black cat, don't look twice, or you'll be gone, for the rooster cries. Charming rite, superstition, clings to them like static. Across Europe, beliefs blossom like mold on damp stone. In parts of Germany, people claimed black cats could steal your soul if they crossed your path before noon. In rural England, if a black cat entered your home uninvited, you were meant to spit thrice and circle your kitchen backward, because that helps. One manuscript even insisted cats knew Latin because they blinked during sermons. Blinked. As in, I'm sleepy and this cathedral is freezing. But no must be a dark omen. Your boots crunch over gravel as you follow the crowd gathering outside a thatched cottage. A boy stands holding a sack. Something inside it yowls. A villager, someone you vaguely recognize from the grain store, claims this cat stared at her while she prayed, and then coincidentally, her chimney collapsed. The logic is seamless, right? The priest arrives moments later, grim-faced, already holding a scroll. Charges are read, suspicion of malice, familiar to unknown practitioner, unnatural gaze. Historians still argue whether these animal trials were more about show than faith. Was it really belief, or just social theater? Did burning a cat serve as a sacrifice to soothe villagers? Or was it just a sad act of collective catharsis? No one knows for certain. But the performances were convincing enough to keep repeating. Even Shakespeare, centuries later, would write of the cat that mews and howls in the night as a sign of wickedness. The myth endured, clawing its way through generations. You watch the sack quiver. You see fur poke through a hole and then vanish. There's something deeply wrong about this, but no one else moves. Even the boy doesn't cry. By sundown, There's a new scorch mark beside the old one, and no one talks about it. That's the strangest part. They all go back to their chores like the square isn't full of ghosts. You wonder what exactly are they afraid of the cats, or what the cats represent. Independence defiance. Something uncomfortably close to the line between wild and wise. A scholar once argued that cats were feared because they didn't need humans. Dogs obey, horses work, but cats observe. They come and go. They choose. You head home. That night you hear soft scratching at your door. You freeze. Just the wind probably. But you don't open it. Not tonight. Because the next trial is already brewing. And somewhere in the dark, a black cat's eyes glow, waiting for judgment. You don't open the door. The scratching fades, replaced by the groan of old wood settling, and a single distant meow that sounds just human enough to make your skin crawl. You lie there blinking at the rafters, wondering if anyone else heard it. Or worse, if they didn't. Morning arrives reluctantly. The sun barely rises, just leans against the horizon, like it's too tired to do its job properly. You walk to the well, passing villagers with the same drawn expressions. Something is unraveling and no one knows how to stop it. Today, someone has scrawled a crude sign outside the chapel, "Beware the devil's pet." Underneath it, a black paw print, maybe real, maybe not. But it's not just here. News trickles in from the next village. 3 cats hanged from the gallows, one nailed to a door, one drowned in a sack with stones, and all this because someone somewhere decided cats were in league with forces beyond comprehension. You shuffle into the church as a storm gathers outside. The priest is mid-sermon voice like gravel in honey. They walk with the witch and sleep in her shadow, he says, face lit by flame. They listen to her spells and whisper them in the dark. You feel yourself shrinking, not out of guilt, but out of absurdity. It's hard to believe this is real, and yet it is. The idea of familiars' animal companions to witches wasn't just folklore, it was legal precedent. In witch trials from the 14th to 17th centuries, cats were often listed by name, described as bearing marks of evil or speaking in unearthly tones. Even scholarly records, those supposedly immune to panic, describe the shape-shifting cat. One account claims a woman transformed into a feline and attacked a soldier, only to be found later wounded in the same place. You shake your head. Even now, that story lives on in regional ballads. In one, a black cat stares from a burning bush and hisses out prophecy. Historians still argue whether the familiar was ever more than metaphor. Was it invented to justify violence, or was it truly believed, woven so tightly into the fabric of fear that it became law? You glance across the pews. A girl clutches her tabby tight beneath her shawl. The cat's ears flick nervously. She catches you looking and tightens her grip. It's the same cat you saw sunning itself on a windowsill a week ago, now smuggled into church like contraband. At the door, an old man mutters about signs, 3 crows on a fence, a shadow shaped like horns. Then he spits and stumbles off. Back at home, you remember your grandmother's stories, how cats could read dreams, how one sat at the edge of her bed the night her brother died. She'd always said they knew something we didn't, and maybe, just maybe, that scared people more than anything else, because cats don't explain themselves. Later, you find a parchment nailed to the market post. Let all beasts be known to court should they behave unnaturally. That word again, unnaturally, as if curling into a circle and purring during a thunderstorm is an affront to God. By twilight, a crowd gathers again. Someone swears a cat danced on a windowsill. Another claims to have seen one balancing on a grave. Proof irrelevant. The accusation is enough. They find the cat not black, not even adult. A striped kitten with tufts of white at its ears. And this time the priest hesitates. He clears his throat. He looks at the crowd. The wind picks up. Maybe it's the kitten's smallness. Maybe it's the drizzle starting to fall. But for the first time, someone laughs. A boy. Just a snort quickly silenced. Then a woman says, "It's just a baby." And for a moment, reason flickers. But the storm swells. Thunder growls. A gust knocks over a lantern. Someone screams, "Sign," and the trial continues. The kitten is tied. Judge sentenced. You don't stay to watch. You walk home through the storm, the mud sucking at your boots. The wind pushes against your coat, but you don't run. You know something now. This isn't just fear, it's ritual. A performance dressed in law and lace. People need something to blame, and cats, silent, secretive, and stubborn, make perfect villains. At your doorstep, you pause. That scratching's back. But when you open the door, nothing's there. Just a few paw prints and the smell of smoke. The storm doesn't stop. It lingers for days, tapping at the windows with long, wet fingers, soaking the fields and flooding the low roads until carts sink and horses refuse to move forward. Some say it's punishment. Others call it cleansing. But behind closed doors, people whisper the truth. The cats are angry. You sit by your fire, the warmth doing little to ease the chill in your spine. Outside, another trial is announced, third one this week. This time, the charges are stranger, eavesdropping, conspiring with a goat, and causing a child to dream of serpents. The defendant, a black and white mouser that once lived in the mill. You didn't know cats could eavesdrop or conspire. But then again, none of this makes sense. So why start now? You wander the village as the wind dies down. The well has overflowed, and there are dead rats floating near the edge. You catch a whiff of rot, and something clicks. With the cats gone, the rats are multiplying. You think back to the grain stores, the farmers' fields, the sickness that started to creep into the children's cheeks. But no one connects it. No one dares. Instead, a new pamphlet is circulating, handwritten, sealed with wax. It warns that cats bring storms, turn milk sour, and sleep on infants' chests to steal breath. There's even an illustration, a demonic-looking tabby hovering over a cradle tongue, out eyes glowing. You scoff, but others don't. The crowd that gathers the next morning to see Moonpaw, that's the cat's name paraded through the square, isn't laughing. They're frightened, desperate. The priest calls it a cleansing of unseen sins, a way to make peace with the Almighty by rooting out evil, however soft-footed it may be. But you see it for what it is, a ritual, a scapegoat, the need to blame something quiet and small for things too big to understand. One man yells that he saw Moonpaw leap from the roof during a lightning strike and land without a sound. Another swears the cat stared too long into his daughter's eyes. Another says he saw the cat vanish, then reappear on the other side of a locked door. Historians still argue whether this belief in supernatural felines was religious, political, or just deeply psychological. Did people truly believe cats walked between worlds, or were they just too stubborn to admit they didn't know what caused disease, crop failure, or grief? The answer, like most things, medieval is probably all three. You stand at the back as the trial begins. The judge, a younger priest this time, looks unsure. His hands shake. Maybe he had a cat once. Maybe he remembers something soft curling around his legs while he studied scripture by candlelight. But then someone shouts, "Witch," and the spell breaks. The ritual marches on. Moonpaw is sentenced to hanging, and this time they do it on the edge of the graveyard. You watch from the trees, fingers clenched. The rope swings once, twice. The wind picks up again. That night, as you walk home, the sky clears briefly, and in that quiet under the silver shine of the moon, you hear it. A soft meow right beside your boots. You freeze. Look down. A small black cat, eyes bright, not afraid. It stares at you for a long time, then walks away, tail high, shoulders, swaying as if none of this concerns it in the slightest. You follow, now through the brush, past the well, to the edge of the woods, where old trees lean in close, and everything smells like moss and memory. The cat disappears into the undergrowth, but not before glancing back once, like an invitation. You don't take it, but you think about it all the way home. The days stretch gray and damp, as if the village is holding its breath. People no longer speak in full sentences, just nods, glances. A muttered prayer here, a quick sign of the cross there. The baker has stopped making sweet rolls. The milk curdles before the hour. And still the trials continue. You're sitting near the chapel wall, the stone cold against your back, when you hear the latest decree by order of the Holy See. All felines of dark color are to be inspected and if found wanting removed. Removed, of course, is polite code. What they mean is tried, sentenced, burned. You blink at the wording Holy See. This has gone higher than you thought. Turns out it has. In 1233, Pope Gregory IX issued the papal bull vox in Rama, which described black cats as the instruments of the devil present at unholy rituals, licking the feet of Satan and speaking in human voices. Human voices. That's in the actual record. You sit with that thought for a while. This wasn't just village hysteria. It was institutionally endorsed. Faith weaponized against fur. Historians still debate the bull's intention. Was it a reaction to rising heresy? A coded strike against specific sects, like the Cathars? Or did the Pope really believe cats were sipping wine at devil banquets? No one knows. But the result was devastating. Across Europe, cats, especially black ones, were hunted, tortured, executed. And in some places, revered cats were turned against overnight. Egypt's sacred guardians, once mummified and honored, now fled from torches and curses. You remember a story from the coast. A noblewoman's cat was ripped from her lap during a sermon. She had to be restrained from clawing the guards herself. She was fined, of course, and the cat was never seen again. You drift through the marketplace that afternoon pretending to look at onions. But what you're really listening for is fear, and there's plenty. A merchant claims his shadow stretched too far the other night and blames the black tom that watches from the roof tiles. A girl says her doll vanished after a cat looked at it. Of course it did. A torch is lit, another scroll posted, another cat hunted. The priest this time is older, a bit shaky but fervent. He speaks of the purification of the soul. He cites Gregory's decree. He says the presence of a black cat in a home is a sign of allegiance to the unholy. The crowd nods, some cross themselves, others spit. And then it happens. Someone shouts, "There's one on the belfry." You follow their eyes. Perched high, impossibly high, sits a long-limbed black cattail, flicking face calm. It's like he was waiting for this. The villagers surge forward, pointing, shouting. A few grab ropes. Someone climbs the ladder. The cat watches. And then with astonishing ease, he leaps from beam to beam over their heads, landing soft as shadow beside the chapel door. He doesn't run. He walks away, tail raised like a flag, vanishing between buildings, like he owns the dawn. You smile, but no one else is amused. That evening, someone says the church bells rang on their own. Another swears they heard purring behind the altar. The next morning, 3 cats are caught and chained in cages. One is pregnant. They're called witches, of course. You think of that leaping cat, how he moved, how he vanished, and something tugs at your mind, an older story older than Gregory, or scrolls or sermons. In Norse lore, cats were sacred to Freya, goddess of love and magic. Her chariot, they said, was pulled by 2 giant felines. In ancient Slavic myth, the cat guarded the underworld, walking between life and death like a silent priest. Even in the early Christianity, some monks considered cats holy keepers of knowledge, guardians against rats and sin. But stories change, and now they burn. That night, you light your own candle, a small one, and place it by the window. No prayers, no declarations, just a quiet flame for whatever's still watching from the trees. Outside, something meows. You leave the door ajar, just a little. It's been a week since the decree. The fires have burned lower, but they haven't gone out. There's ash in the gutters now, gathering like black snow. The village cats, the few that remain, have either disappeared entirely or haunt the alleys like ghosts, silent, watching, deciding. You spend your days pretending everything is fine. You chop wood, you tend your soup, you nod politely to the man whose cat was hanged last Tuesday. But something's shifted. The air is wrong, not just heavy but expectant, like the village is waiting for something else to go wrong, because it always does. That morning, you hear a scream, not a cry for help, not a shout of surprise. It's a long, raw scream that seems to scrape the very bones of the chapel walls. You run toward it along with everyone else. A crowd has gathered near the stables, and in the center stands a woman holding a burlap sack. It's soaked through, moving, screeching. Someone whispers, "She caught one," but the woman doesn't look triumphant. She looks horrified. You push through the crowd just in time to see her drop the sack, and out tumbles a cat the size of a melon fur, white with a splotch of black like a smudge on its spine. It's coughing wet, shaking, definitely not demonic, but no one moves to help it. Instead, the priest steps forward, flanked by 2 boys with torches. He reads from a scroll, again voice shaking. A creature seen lurking in barns, known to the accused appearing during storms and unclean hours. The woman interrupts. "It's just a farm cat." The crowd murmurs. The priest clears his throat. All cats marked by the devil must face trial. The cat sneezes. Someone chuckles nervously, but no one laughs long. The priest lifts his hand, and the boys move forward. You step back, not out of fear, out of helplessness, because it doesn't matter what the cat did. It never does. The trial isn't about guilt, it's about ritual. And today, the ritual requires another offering. The fire is small this time, damp straw, too much smoke. The cat mews once, then silence. No one cheers, no one speaks. But you swear the priest flinches when the wind blows the smoke straight into his face. Later that day, you find yourself near the mill, sitting on the cold stone wall. You're not alone. An older man, eyes foggy with age, says without looking, "We used to worship them." You raise an eyebrow. In the east, he adds, cats guarded temples, were fed before soldiers. Some say they carried prayers. You ask what happened. He shrugs. We got scared. Historians still argue whether medieval Europe's fear of cats came purely from religion, or if it masked something older, some primal discomfort with animals who seem to choose when to obey. Unlike livestock or hunting dogs, cats exist beside us, not beneath. They keep their secrets. They walk away. And people don't like being left behind. That evening, you notice something strange. The rats are back. You see them near the granary, hear them scratching behind the tannery. Someone's cheese goes missing. A child wakes with bites on her ankles. Still no one makes the connection out loud, because to say we need cats would be to admit the trials were wrong, that the fear was misguided, that the scrolls, the sermons, the smoke, they were all for nothing. So no one says it. Not yet. That night, the rain returns. You lie in bed listening to it, rattle the shutters like bones in a cup. Then softly a paw against the door. You wait. It comes again. Scratch, scratch. You rise, light a candle, open the door. Nothing. But the paw prints are there, clear in the mud, leading away toward the trees. And there in the distance, two eyes catch your candlelight and hold it, watching, not afraid, just waiting. The next morning, there's a rat in your flour. You find it curled in the sack belly, round eyes glassy. It's chewed through the grain and left behind droppings and silence. You stare at it for a long time, not with disgust, but calculation. Because now, finally, the absence is measurable. With each cat lost to the pyres, the rats have crept back in. At first, it was just scratching, then nibbles, now full-on infestation. You mention this to the man at the well, who nods too quickly and changes the subject. You see the baker sweeping chewed crusts from her shelves. You hear a mother scolding her son for leaving food out, though you both know it wouldn't have mattered. Still, no one says it. Cats used to keep things in balance, until balance was declared heresy. And now it's too late. The priest, however, does not see it that way. He sees the rats as a second sign, a consequence of impurity not yet purged. Evil begets evil, he preaches voice high with righteousness. The devil takes many forms, and one beast invites the next. You sit in the back pew. You stare at the candlelight flickering along the stone archways, and you feel it, the tension, cracking like thin ice beneath boots. That afternoon, the village receives a visitor. A traveling scribe soaked to the bone, wrapped in a cloak that smells of ink and damp leather. He carries news and scrolls from a nearby city where trials have escalated. Entire colonies of cats rounded up, condemned, destroyed. One town built a pit. Another constructed a cage large enough to hold 30 at once. A final cleansing, the scroll says. But the scribe, as he dries his feet by your fire, adds something else in a whisper. The plague followed them. You tilt your head. He nods grimly. The towns with no cats are the ones that sicken fastest. Rats feast in the streets. Fleas jump from boots to beds. Whole families gone in days. Historians still argue whether the medieval cat purges helped or hindered the spread of the Black Death. Some suggest the decimation of cat populations gave rats and their plague-bearing fleas free rein. Others claim the disease moved too fast, too unpredictably, for the cats to matter. But you've seen enough by now to trust your gut, and your gut says balance matters. You thank the scribe. He leaves behind a scroll, and you keep it tucked beneath your bed. That night, the rats chew through your wall. You hear them skittering behind the panels, gnawing the wood, chattering in the dark. Your candle flickers. The silence afterward is worse than the noise. But before you can rise to inspect, you hear it. A hiss. Soft, dangerous, familiar. The sound of warning. You freeze heart racing and then smile, because it's followed by a squeal. Then another. Then nothing. In the morning, you find the paw prints again muddy, delicate, trailing across your hearth, and beside them, 3 dead rats. No blood, just neat, deliberate bodies lined up like a message. And it is a message. The cat is back, not just to survive, but to rebalance. Later that day, you whisper the story to the baker, who nods too slowly. She doesn't admit it, but the next time you pass her window, there's a saucer of milk on the sill. Another man leaves out scraps near the coop. No one says the word aloud, but they're thinking it. Maybe it's time to stop the trials. But the priest sees it too. He watches the saucers multiply. He sees the paw prints in the courtyard. He hears whispers of good luck and blessed mice, and it terrifies him. So he doubles down. A new sermon, a new warning. The beast has returned, he declares, and it walks among us again. But this time, fewer nods. Even the torchbearers hesitate, because deep down, they've started to understand something you've known for weeks. You can burn every scroll, you can silence every meow, but some things return anyway, and the cats, they always come back. It starts with a single parchment nailed to the chapel door. No royal seal, no clerical stamp, just rough ink on worn fiber. You stop to read it on your way to the well, pretending not to. The title is smeared by dew, but the message is clear. On the matter of justice for beasts accused. It's unsigned, but everyone knows who wrote it. The town scribe, old hunched, rarely seen, outside his little room above the granary, has finally spoken. His voice is soft, but his words carry. He doesn't condemn the trials outright. He doesn't name names. He just asks a single question. If the creature cannot speak, how shall it defend itself? You glance around. Others are reading it too, pretending not to care. But they do. Because there it is, in black and gray, the truth they've all tiptoed around for weeks. That the cat, yes, the cat, has no voice in court, no counsel, no defense, no jury of its peers, just judgment, swift, brutal, irrevocable. Still, tradition is hard to break, and the courtroom, if you can call it that, is still in use. You slip inside one afternoon curious, and what you find is not a court at all. It's a barn, a low timbered building with packed dirt floors and stacked crates that now serve as witness stands. A pig snorts in a pen near the back. A child waits to testify about a beetle infestation. And at the center of it, all on a hay bale throne, sits the village's makeshift judge, the blacksmith. This isn't law, this is performance, but it's recorded all the same, on scrolls, with ink, under oath. That's the strange thing about the Middle Ages. The absurd and the sacred were never far apart. Historians have uncovered actual legal proceedings involving insects, rodents, pigs, and yes, cats. Some records detail testimonies from farmers who claimed cows had been bewitched into dry udders. Others list beetles as co-conspirators in crop failure. There are even reports of snails summoned to trial for trespassing. One 15th century trial in France listed a rooster for laying an egg, a sign of witchcraft apparently. It was executed, swiftly. You sit in that barn court as a man complains about his cabbage being stolen by a wily cat with stripes. He claims the cat licked his tools, then he fell ill. He swears this is connected. The judge listens, nods, then announces, "We will watch for the striped cat." That's the judgment. No trial, no verdict. Just the slow machinery of fear churning forward one paw print at a time. You leave before the next case begins a dispute over a toad with accusatory eyes. The absurdity itches under your skin. Later, you pass a child sketching in the dirt. She's drawn a cat, but not like others. Hers has wings. She calls it a guardian. It fights bad dreams, she says. You smile, but you also know if the priest saw that he'd call it heresy. Imagination is dangerous in fearful times. Back home, you reread the parchment from the scribe. That one sentence stays with you. If the creature cannot speak, how shall it defend itself? The next morning, someone's erased the message, torn the parchment down. But you notice something new in its place. A chalk drawing on the door. A cat sitting, watching. No words, just presence. The priest preaches harder the following Sunday voice, hoarse from repetition. But half the pews are empty. The baker didn't come. The granary keeper didn't either. And the milkmaid who used to nod along with every verse stares at her shoes. The tide is turning. Historians still debate whether this change came from logic fatigue or guilt. Maybe all three. Maybe it was the rats. Maybe it was the children drawing winged cats. Maybe after so many trials, people just wanted silence again. Or maybe it was because the cats refused to vanish, because by now they're everywhere again, slinking across rooftops, curling in hay bales, peeking from the forest's edge, no longer afraid, no longer hiding, just there, and the villagers, they've stopped pointing. They've started nodding. You notice it most at dusk, the way the village exhales like a sigh held too long. The doors stay open a little later. The shutters creak less often. Even the wind seems softer, brushing against the eaves like it's checking in rather than accusing. And in this gentler hour, the cats return. They walk the alleys not like fugitives, but like they never left. Their paws stir no panic. Their eyes no longer spark whispered prayers. They move like smoke, slow, effortless, certain, and no one stops them. Still, there are pockets of resistance. A scroll appears again on the chapel door. This one far less poetic than the scribes. "Let no beast walk unjudged," it reads, with the priest's mark scrawled clumsily at the bottom. But you can feel it. The spell is weakening. One morning, you pass the tannery and see a cat curled in the sun atop a salt barrel. A few weeks ago, someone would have shouted. Now the tanner just keeps working, barely glancing up. Yet not all cats are so lucky. On the edge of town, a woman named Corinne finds her tabby missing. She searches for hours, eyes red, voice hoarse. Her husband says nothing, but his hands shake as he draws water. You offer to help. So do others. The cat turns up in the woods, caught in a crude trap wire twisted through wood, baited with cheese. It's still breathing, but barely. Corinne sobs as she wraps it in her apron. You walk back with her slow and quiet. No one speaks of who set the trap, but the silence says enough. Later that night, someone places a small wooden sign near the town square. It simply reads, "We remember Miette." Miette. You blink, that name. It's one of the earliest recorded feline trials in medieval France. A gray tabby accused of theft, of bringing hunger to the house that housed it, tried and sentenced in front of witnesses. According to a surviving account, the cat never fought, just looked at the crowd, then looked away. The story stuck, passed down, quietly, like guilt passed hand to hand, and now someone has remembered. The next day, more signs appear. Not paper this time. Wood mostly, scratched with names, symbols, some crude, some delicate. To moon paws, for the one on the roof, whiskers were sorry. You pass them like headstones. Historians still argue whether any of these signs are real memorials or just strange village art. But that's the thing about memory. It doesn't need approval to take root. Sometimes it grows in the cracks between fear. Meanwhile, the courtroom barn sees fewer visitors. The crates gather dust. The judge still the blacksmith stops showing up. One afternoon, you walk by and find a cat sitting inside alone on the witness stand. It blinks at you, stretches, jumps down and walks away, as if to say, "We're done here." You smile, because you know something's changing. The rats are vanishing again, not fast but steadily. The grain sacks stay sealed, the milk stays fresh, and for the first time in months, a baby sleeps through the night without crying. No one credits the cats out loud, but they all know. You pass a house with a new kitten in the window, a bowl beside it. A child sings softly as she brushes its fur. The priest tries one final sermon. The devil still walks, he warns. He hides in velvet paws and purrs. But only a few stay to listen, and when the doors open afterward, the street outside is full of cats, napping on carts, staring from windows, darting between gardens like threads in a tapestry, no longer afraid to be seen. The trials aren't over, not yet, but something deeper has broken, not the cats, the spell. And as night falls, you step outside with a candle and see them dozens of glowing eyes blinking in the dark. Not threatening, just watching, waiting. And for once, you don't look away. You can smell the rain before it comes. Not sharp, not cold, but earthy like tilled soil and wood smoke. A spring storm this time, not the wrathful downpours of winter, the kind that makes grass grow overnight and wakes up frogs you haven't heard in months. You leave your shutters cracked, not because you're waiting for anyone, but because you're not afraid anymore. The village is quieter now in a good way, less muttering, fewer scrolls nailed to things. The priest has taken to long walks alone, shoulders hunched, sermons shorter. Someone says he's been reading about natural philosophy. Another says he's been feeding a stray near the chapel. Either way, you're not sure it matters, because something's shifted. Take today, for instance. You pass the square and find children giggling near the stalks, not at someone inside, but at a cat. A little gray one perched boldly on the headrest tail, flicking eyes half closed in a sunbeam. One of the kids reaches up and scratches its chin. The cat leans in. Just like that, justice has new furniture. The blacksmith no longer serves as judge. In fact, he's back to hammering horseshoes and doesn't mention trials at all. The scribe still writes, but now it's poems. One of them, you're told, compares a purring cat to the turning of seasons. The woman who lost Moonpaw. She keeps a new cat now, big, orange, answers to Bishop of all things. He's become something of a fixture, strolling into the tavern like he owns it, curling up by the fire, stealing sausage ends with zero shame. You love him immediately. Still, the scars remain. Not all are ready to forget. Some villagers flinch when a cat jumps on a table. Others mutter about watching their souls. But the torches are gone. The traps are rusting. And the silence that tense waiting quiet is no longer heavy. It's just peace. And then something odd happens. The mayor receives a scroll, wax seal, official, from a town several days south. Inside, a request. They've heard rumors, strange ones, about your village. That the rats have gone, that the milk is fresh, that the wheat no longer molds in the barrel, and most of all, that cats are thriving. Protected. They want to know your secret. You laugh when you hear it, a bitter sort of joy. The secret, of course, is this. You stopped setting them on fire. The messenger leaves the next morning with a letter penned by the scribe. It's careful, diplomatic, but between the lines it says everything we have chosen to live beside, not above the beasts that share our world. Historians still argue whether this kind of shift happened anywhere officially, whether laws changed or people simply forgot to be cruel. But the record shows something across Europe. Cat populations began to rebound. Not everywhere, not quickly, but steadily. Some towns even passed laws protecting cats. Others began to keep them in churches. One famous monastery centuries later would be known for housing a dozen cats who slept in the library curled between scrolls and scribes. You think of that future distant and warm, and then you think of Gaston, Miette, Moonpaw, and all the names scratched into wood and stone and memory. They didn't get scrolls, or laws, or soft laps and saucers of cream, but they got remembered. That night, you find a cat waiting at your door. You've seen her before once or twice, black as candle soot, one white paw like a forgotten glove. She doesn't meow, just walks in like she owns the place, circles your legs, hops up beside the fire. You don't ask her name. She'll tell you if she wants. You sit in the glow, the rain starting again outside, and you hear it, the soft rumble of purring, like a drum buried under moss, like thunder far away. And for the first time in months, you close your eyes before the candle burns out. Morning comes with birdsong, not the frantic chirping of survival, but lazy, meandering calls like even the sparrows are stretching. You rise slowly the way you do when nothing waits urgently beyond the door. And when you open it, there she is, the black cat, still there, still watching, still entirely unbothered by your presence. She doesn't move, just yawns. The village feels new today, not different exactly, but softened, as if the edges have been sanded down by time, rain, and quiet understanding. You pass the chapel, and for once no sermon echoes inside, just the hush of sweeping. Someone's tidying, perhaps penance. At the edge of the village, you see something unexpected, a procession, not a grand one, no banners, no horns, just a line of people carrying bundles, jars a cart of books, and at the front, walking not riding a man in a scholar's robe. He's from the university, they say, from the city, sent to observe and document the cultural shift concerning feline treatment in isolated settlements. In other words, he came to see the cats. He sets up near the granary, unpacks scrolls ink a stool that creaks every time he leans over, and most importantly, a leather-bound journal labeled Testimonies of the Feline Trials. The villagers watch him warily, but he doesn't scoff, doesn't mock. He listens. To the baker who recalls hiding her cat under the bread oven, to the scribe who reads his parchment aloud with a shaking voice, to the milkmaid who admits she once believed every meow was a curse and now lets one sleep on her windowsill. He writes it all down, and then he does something no one expects. He paints, sketches really simple outlines of the cats he meets, some curled, some leaping, some just watching. He captures their stillness, their mystery, and without saying so, he honors them. Historians still discuss this journal. It's not especially scientific, but it's vivid, emotional, a glimpse into the mindset of a village that moved beyond fear not by decree, but by fatigue and compassion. It marks the moment cats began to return, not just to hearths, but to history. One page stands out, a note scribbled in the margin. It is impossible to place a creature on trial when it refuses to participate. You nod when you read it, because that's what it's always been, hasn't it? Cats don't perform. They don't plead. They don't bow their heads when accused. They simply are. And maybe that's what frightened people all along. Not darkness, not magic, but freedom. That afternoon, a child brings the scholar a kitten, white fur, pink nose, endless curiosity. The scholar lifts it gently, lets it crawl across his table. He chuckles as it swats his quill. Later he writes, "Justice perhaps lies in knowing when not to act." You find yourself visiting the granary more often now, not for grain, but to watch people speak, share, grieve. The scrolls no longer list crimes. They list names, memories. One woman knits collars in quiet apology. A boy composes a song about a cat who walked through fire and came out purring. It's bad, but everyone claps. And the priest. He sits beside the scribe some evenings quiet, reflective. His hands tremble not from age, but from memory. He never asks forgiveness, but he listens. The cats, they remain mostly aloof, but present. And that night, as dusk melts into deep blue, you catch a glimpse of something on the chapel roof. A silhouette, tail high, back arched in the wind, the same black cat. She looks down at you, then vanishes like smoke into sky. You smile, because for the first time you're not worried about where she's going. You're just glad she came back. The wind carries the scent of lavender today. Not because it's blooming too early for that, but because someone has been drying it in bunches and tucking it into windows, under doorsteps, and curiously beside cat bowls. The village has taken on a kind of gentle ritualism, not out of fear this time, but out of quiet reverence. You walk through the square and notice it's grown, softer. The stalks are gone. The courtroom barn now stores apples and barley. Children draw with chalk on the stones where once verdicts echoed, and every so often their drawings include little paw prints trailing behind witches and angels. The lines blur, the stories blend, but no one's correcting them. Behind the granary, you find a new sight, a small wooden marker freshly carved. At first, You think it's another memorial, but it's not. It reads, "The Court of the Cat," and beside it, lounging in the sun like royalty, is Bishop the Orange Tavern Cat, wearing a collar that jingles faintly when he yawns. Someone has clearly appointed him as judge now. You bow playfully. He ignores you, as all good judges do. The scholar from the city still scribbles away, occasionally stopping to sketch or ask questions. But his tone has shifted. At first, he arrived to document a peculiar phenomenon. Now he seems to be learning from it. One afternoon, he asks if you ever saw a trial yourself. You pause. Then you nod, and he asks, what was the cat like? You tell him quiet, still, watchful, and then you add something you didn't expect to say. I think it forgave us. He blinks, then writes it down word for word. Historians still question whether animals experience emotions the way humans do, but stories from across centuries suggest they remember. They return to places of pain. They comfort. They resist. In ancient texts, cats appear as both sacred and sinister, always lingering at the edge of understanding. But here in this village, they are something else, entirely present. Not symbols, not omens, just themselves. You walk through the fields at dusk and see them, dozens now threading through wheat, curling in barn lofts, sleeping on warm stones. The rats, meanwhile, are in retreat. You hear fewer scratches, see fewer droppings. The balance, it seems, has returned. But the biggest change isn't the cats, it's the people. The priest now walks with Bishop at his heels. The baker leaves her window open even at night. The milkmaid ties ribbons to her cat's tail and laughs when it chews them off. And you keep the black cat. She never officially moved in. She just stayed. Sits on your windowsill at night, stretches across your hearth, brushes her tail against your leg when you take too long pouring water. You name her Vespra, for the hour she arrived and for the quiet she brought with her. One evening, you find a girl reading aloud to her cat in the square, a story about a feline who outwits a king. Another child joins, then another. Soon it's a full gathering. Cats everywhere tucked into laps, batting at pages, dozing in soft laps like they've always belonged. And in a way they have. The trials have ended not with a decree, not with a bell, but with a yawn, a stretch, and the simple choice of a village to stop being afraid. And yet, you still see it sometimes. That look in older eyes, in the curve of a smile that doesn't quite reach forgiveness. The memory of what was done, what was allowed, it lingers, but that's okay, because healing doesn't erase the past. It learns to sit beside it, like a cat on your windowsill watching the road. That night, as you drift off, you hear soft footfalls across your roof. You don't rise, you don't need to, you know what it is. And you whisper, "You're welcome here." Spring slides into summer, like honey warming in the sun. The air hums. Bees weave through tall grass. Bread rises faster. Laughter lingers longer in doorways. And everywhere, there are cats. It's not just the original few anymore. New litters have appeared, born beneath wood piles and behind clay ovens. Kittens with soot-dark fur and curious blue eyes tumble through alleys, pounce on beetles, wrestle scraps of cloth as if they're conquering dragons. No one stops them. In fact, a new festival is proposed quietly, almost sheepishly, by the baker's youngest daughter. She calls it the Day of Whiskers. The name sticks. At first, it's just drawings and silly rhymes and bits of bread left on windowsills. But then someone brings out a carved wooden cat from their attic, dusts it off, and places it at the chapel steps. No one removes it. The priest stands beside it and says nothing. Then after a long pause, he blesses it, just once, just softly, and that's how it begins. By sundown, the square is filled with candles, in jars, small bowls of milk, and dozens of makeshift statues, some from clay, others just twisted twigs. Cats roam freely through it, all tails high, stealing fish and curling up in laps without permission or apology. You watch from your doorstep Vespra pressed against your ankle, purring like a distant drum. Her gaze flicks between the candles, not suspicious, just thoughtful. The scholar from the city records everything. He's writing a new volume now, Whiskers and Wisdom Cultural Realignment, in post-trial communities. He asks you what you think the cats mean to the people now. You consider it, and finally answer, we don't need them to mean anything. We just like having them here. He smiles at that. Historians still wonder what caused the shift. Some claim it was necessity, the rats, the food stores, the plagues. Others say it was cultural fatigue, that eventually, no matter how deeply rooted the fear, a society tires of hating something that never fought back. But you think it was something simpler. Time to sit, to watch, to see a cat curl its paw over its nose and dream, and realize there's nothing demonic about a creature who just wants to nap in a sunbeam. One morning you find Vespra watching the forest again, eyes wide, still. You follow her gaze. There's something there, just beyond the trees, a flicker of movement. You catch a glimpse, black fur, long limbs, a flash of white on the ear. The leper, the one from the belfry all those months ago. He doesn't come closer, just watches. You nod. He blinks, then vanishes into the green. That evening, you carve a name for him in the wooden ring around the well. The one who watched. More names follow. The memorial becomes a circle of stories, a quiet place where children listen and elders tell tales. Of Mietta the cat who sang storms to sleep, of Gaston who turned away from fire, of Moonpaw who never blinked when judged, and of Vespra who simply stayed. People add little charms, bells, feathers, scraps of ribbon. A charm is tied to every kitten's tail, now a gentle reminder that they are protected, that they belong. There are no more trials, no more sentences, only stories. The scribe-old now leaves behind one final parchment, a single sentence. If they return, let them find us kinder. And with that, the book closes. But the cats remain. Summer deepens, and the village begins to glow, not just with heat, though the stones hold it long into dusk, but with something more enduring. A rhythm, a trust, a kind of unspoken agreement between claw and hand paw and doorframe. The cats have claimed the rooftops. You notice it one afternoon looking up from your water pail. There they are, 5, maybe 6, lounging like little kings on the sun-warmed tiles. They roll, lazily stretch their spines, blink down at the world like it's all a bit amusing. And maybe it is. Vespra joins them sometimes, but always comes home. You've begun to talk to her more, not like a pet, and certainly not like an object of fear or worship, but like a roommate who always knows more than she lets on. She listens, and that's enough. The scholar, now deeply tanned, ink-stained, and half feral in the way all long-term visitors become, has begun reading his notes aloud in the square. Did you know he says one evening there are written records of cats being summoned as witnesses in trials? The crowd blinks. Witnesses, he repeats. Not defendants, not curses, but witnesses. He flips open a scroll, the edge brittle. In 1387, in a coastal town, a cat was brought forward during a dispute between neighbors over property lines. One man swore the cat always slept on his stoop, proving the boundary was his. You laugh along with the others. But then someone asks, and did the cat testify? The scholar grins. She fell asleep on the bench. Case closed. The crowd erupts in laughter. But beneath the amusement, something important settles. The idea that cats were once trusted, valued not just as hunters or companions, but as observers. Creatures who saw all judged nothing and kept secrets like monks. Historians still argue whether these moments were serious or symbolic. But here in your village, you know the truth. Cats never stopped watching. They simply waited until we were ready to be seen. That night, you walk past the granary and find 3 cats sitting in a perfect triangle staring up at the moon. They don't move when you approach, just glance sideways, acknowledging not disturbed. You sit on the step nearby. No one speaks. No one needs to. Later, a woman in her 80s offers a strange confession. I used to pour water on them, she says softly, to chase them off. I thought they brought misfortune. You nod. And now you ask. She looks at the orange lump purring on her lap. Now I think they brought patience. You remember a story from a scroll the scholar shared, a tale from the Middle East, where cats were allowed in mosques and fed before some people. They were seen as clean, gentle, blessed. One even traveled with a prophet curling beside him in prayer. You tell this story at the evening gathering. A girl raises her hand. Were they ever tried there, she asks. You pause. No, you say. They were trusted. The fire crackles. It's not a long conversation, but it leaves a mark. The next morning, the chapel doors are propped open. Inside, a single cat naps on the altar step, undisturbed. And outside, a new sign. Wooden, burned letters. Peace to those with silent steps. The old courtroom barn becomes a library. The scholar stays. The priest writes poetry now. He doesn't read it aloud, but you find a verse tucked under a stone near the well. They judged with fire, but we survived by purrs. Now we sleep and dream and forgive. That evening you find Vespra watching you from the garden wall. Her tail flicks once, then twice, then she leaps down lands without a sound and walks toward you. She presses her head to your ankle, and for a moment all the trials, the fire, the silence, they disappear. All that's left is fur warmth and a breath of lavender on the breeze. You start noticing the silence again, but now it's the good kind, not the tense, watchful hush from the days of trials and smoke, but the calm quiet that comes after something has healed, like the pause after rain when everything waits to see if the sky will crack open again. But it doesn't. The sky stays soft. You walk through the village and see the changes stitched into the corners. A carved cat on the lintel of the baker's home, a quilt hanging from a window patched with tiny fabric tails, a doorbell that chimes with a sound suspiciously like a purr. Even the priest, once thunder and ink, now keeps a basket of fish bones behind the chapel. For visitors, he says with a cough that could be a chuckle, And Vespra, she owns the house now. You've accepted it. She takes your chair. She chooses your bedtime. She decides whether your writing hand is available or occupied by a tale. Sometimes she disappears for days, only to return and act like you're the one who left. You don't argue, because of course she was watching the borders, and the borders are bigger now. News has spread. Other villages, once suspicious, are beginning to listen. A letter arrives from the south. We have stopped the traps. Another from the mountains. The rats have returned. So have the cats. So have we. It's not coordinated. There's no banner, no revolution. Just a shift, a whisper from one hearth to another. A new understanding growing not in the law, but in the heart. Historians still debate whether such shifts can last without structure, but you've seen how long a cat can sit unmoving, watching a single leaf fall from a tree. They're masters of patience. One afternoon, a peddler arrives with books. He lays them out on cloth in the square. Most are histories. One catches your eye. The title, The Courtroom Menagerie. You open it, and there they are, the cases. The pigs, the snails, the roosters, the cats. Each one described in parchment detail. Each absurd and sad and strangely beautiful. At the back, a handwritten note. Perhaps the question was never why we judged them, but why they stayed anyway. You close the book. The peddler smiles and tosses in a bookmark shaped like a cat's tail. You spend that night by candlelight, rereading the stories. Some you remember from the scholar's scrolls. Others are new. One about a cat in Switzerland who vanished mid-trial, never to be seen again. Another in Poland, where a town spared a tabby after it leapt into a priest's lap and purred so loudly it stopped the sentence. You wonder if those stories were true. Then again, you're not sure that matters, because stories are truths of a different shape. That evening, you sit with the children in the square. They're writing their own trial scripts now, but for fun. One child plays the accused another, the judge, but every story ends the same. The cat is innocent, the crowd cheers, and someone offers a treat. The old court barn now hosts these trials every week. A kind of theater, a gentle rewriting. One girl asks you, what would you put a cat on trial for, you think? And say, stealing my pillow. Everyone laughs, even the priest. Vespra, of course, blinks from the rooftop like none of this concerns her. She's right, because this isn't about her anymore. It's about you, all of you, learning to see, to sit still, to wait for the shadow to pass without throwing a stone. That night, as dusk seeps into the walls and the candles gutter low, you feel a shift in the wind again, not fear, but a reminder that watching is not the same as judging, that silence does not mean absence, and that some trials never needed to begin in the first place. The first leaf falls, not with drama, not with a storm, just a quiet spiral from the tallest oak behind the chapel landing unnoticed on a cobblestone warmed by months of sun and paw steps. Autumn has come not to take, but to slow, and the village for once is ready. You feel it in the way people move, slower now, but not with age, with ease, with intention, no longer racing against fear, but strolling beside it, knowing it can be quieted. You notice the cats even more in autumn. Maybe it's the chill in the mornings that draws them to hearths and knees. Maybe it's the rustling of dry leaves that stirs their instincts. Or maybe it's just because they can. Because no one hurls stones anymore. Because no one lights torches at the sight of fur. Vespra is more present than usual. She's taken to sleeping at the edge of your bedpaws, tucked beneath her, like she's guarding a dream. You sometimes wake in the night to find her watching you. Not eerily, just curiously, like she still hasn't made up her mind about you, but is enjoying the experiment. That feels fair. The scholar departs next week. He's been packing slowly, as though each quill and scroll weighs more than he expected. The townspeople hold a quiet gathering for him in the granary library. There's bread cider, and someone's carved a tiny cat from candle wax as a parting gift. He almost cries. I came here to study, he says, holding it, but I think I learned how to see. You walk with him to the edge of the forest the next morning. Vespra follows for a while, then stops, sits tail wrapped around her feet, eyes on the path. The scholar turns, once raises his hand. She blinks, and that's farewell enough. Historians might say this moment isn't important, that it's anecdotal, that it doesn't change kingdoms or laws, but they would be wrong. Because the return of a cat to a village once ruled by fear is a revolution in miniature. That afternoon, you pass the library and find a new scroll posted on the door. Written by the priest, it reads, "So confession. I once believed silence meant sin. Now I see silence is a form of trust." You pause to reread it and realize he's speaking of more than sermons. The next trial reenactment, now more game than judgment, features a cat accused of stealing dreams. The witnesses are two children. The judge is the baker's apprentice, and the defense is played by a tabby named Butter, who spends the entire proceeding cleaning his tail. He is acquitted. Of course. The play ends with applause and a plate of scraps. Butter accepts the ruling with a brief yawn and walks off stage. You watch smiling as the children gather to write the next script. One suggests putting humans on trial for calling cats mean names. Another proposes a courtroom just for mice. Justice for everyone, she says, arms crossed. You nod, because this too is part of healing, not erasing the past, but teaching the next generation to hold it gently, to reshape it. You find Vespra curled by the fireplace that night. Outside, the wind is cooler and the leaves whisper in their sleep. She opens one eye as you settle beside her. You whisper, "Would you have burned me if the roles were reversed?" She closes her eye again, probably, and that's fair too, because you did once, not you personally perhaps, but your kind, your fear, your need to control what you didn't understand, to name every shadow and burn it just in case it spoke back. But the cats, they watched, they walked, they waited, and when the fires died down, they returned. The harvest comes early this year. Fat apples tumble from trees, wheat bends in golden arcs. Even the bees seem unhurried, as if they know they've done enough. The village, once so taut with fear it could have snapped in half, now hums like a hive in slow, sweet motion. And the cats, they nap. Everywhere, in baskets of squash, on windowsills, beneath benches in the shade. Sometimes you spot 3 or 4 tangled in a pile so intertwined you can't tell where one begins and the others end. No one disturbs them, not even the children, especially not the children. They've become the fiercest defenders of the feline peace. No loud footsteps near sleeping paws, one warns a visitor. And never wake a cat unless the house is on fire. Solid policy. A boy nails up a painted sign beside the granary. Let the cats sleep. They've earned it. The villagers nod solemnly as if it's scripture. You've noticed other changes too. Not loud ones, not sudden, just grace. The priest doesn't speak of sin anymore. Now he talks about rest. He quotes less from the old scrolls and more from his own notes, short lines, simple phrases. Mercy moves slow. Not all darkness is waiting to bite you. The smallest judge has the sharpest eyes. The scribe hands weaker now dictates more than he writes. But his granddaughter has taken up the quill. She draws cats lounging in sunbeams on the same parchment that once catalogued firewood and floggings. One of her sketches becomes a stamp pressed into the bottom corner of every village letter. A curled cattail looping into a spiral. It's become the unofficial seal of peace. And somehow, you realize no one even noticed the change. It just happened. Historians would look for an edict, a council, some sharp, clean line in the dust. But here it happened in soft things. A meow at the right time, a paw print in the right place. The quiet understanding that something once feared was never dangerous, just misunderstood. You find an old trap in your shed one morning, rusting, useless. You leave it in the square beside the communal fire pit. By afternoon, someone has filled it with marigolds. Vespra climbs into your lap that evening. She's not a kitten anymore. Her shape has settled her gait, slower, more sure. She doesn't purr often, but when she does, it's like sitting beside a distant drumbeat. You remember the first time you saw her. You remember the first time you were afraid of her. And you remember the first time you weren't. That's the true arc, isn't it? Not guilt, not even apology. But that flickering moment when fear loosens its grip and something warm takes its place. The harvest festival nears. A new tradition this year, every family carves a wooden cat to place by their hearth. They're crude mostly. Chiseled ears too sharp, tails too short. But the care is real. The children dress theirs in ribbons. One is wearing a tiny crown made of wheat. The mayor stands beside the pile of figurines and smiles. I never thought we'd be a cat village, he says. But you always were. The difference now is you know it. That night you sit under the stars, the last heat of the fire warming your palms. Around you the village sleeps. Cats thread between homes like dreams with paws. A soft meow echoes across the square. You hear it answered, and another, and another. A chorus of watchful sentinels, no longer hunted, no longer judges. Just present, just here, just home. By now, you don't even flinch when you step on a tail in the dark. There's a hiss, of course, a dignified rebuke, and then the soft sound of paw pads vanishing across the floorboards. You whisper an apology into the quiet, and somewhere from under the table, you swear you hear a dismissive thump. That's fair. The house belongs to the cats now. Or rather, it always did. You're simply more polite about it these days. Outside autumn deepens into a slow, amber burn. Leaves drift like lazy thoughts, blanketing cobblestones and rooftops alike. The entire village has taken on the feeling of a long exhale. Not tiredness, not sorrow, just peace. You walk to the granary and find a kitten asleep in a basket of apples. The baker chuckles. He's inspecting them for sweetness, she says. No one questions it. You've noticed something else too, how many visitors have begun to arrive. Not scholars anymore, not messengers, but ordinary folk from other towns. They come for the stories they've heard about a place where cats sleep on altars and aren't chased away, where milk bowls are left without comment, where no one lights fires unless it's for warmth. They ask cautious questions, they peek around corners, and slowly they soften. One man brings a cage with a terrified ginger cat inside. They said I could free her here, he murmurs. You nod. Open the cage. The cat darts out, then pauses, looking back. A blink. A pause. And then she slinks into the alley like she's lived here forever. You never see the cage again. The newcomers stay longer with each visit. Some leave drawings, little offerings. One sculpts a cat out of river stone and places it by the chapel steps. Someone else stitches tiny paw prints into the hem of a traveling cloak. The scholar's book, now bound and printed, begins to show up in saddlebags and coat pockets. The title still glows in gold whiskers and wisdom. Historians have begun to cite it not for law, but for insight. A record not of rulings, but of unraveling, of how fear becomes folklore and how folklore can be rewritten. One afternoon, you find the priest sanding down an old podium, the one used to deliver guilty verdicts. He says nothing, just hands you a brush. Together you smooth away the splinters of accusation. He turns it into a planter. You fill it with herbs. The cats sleep beside it. That evening the village gathers beneath lanterns hung from the trees. A quiet celebration. No name, no speeches, just food, music. Someone plays a lyre. Someone else reads a story written by a child titled The Cat Who Watched the Sun. Vespera is there, of course. She perches on your shoulder for a while, then wanders to sit beneath the lanterns, watching the lights sway like fireflies caught in dreams. No one bothers her. You hear the blacksmith say, "We should thank them." Someone else adds, "For what?" And the answer is simple, for staying, because they could have left, after everything, after the fires, after the cages. They could have vanished into the woods and never returned. But they came back. They curled up on the same stones, once soaked with fear. They blinked at the same hands that once raised torches. They stayed, and in doing so they taught the village how to stay too, with each other, with memory, with mercy. You lie awake that night, not out of worry but wonder. You think about Miette Moonpaw Gaston, names spoken now with affection, not shame. You wonder if the cats remember, if the purring that fills your home is in some small way forgiveness. You hope so, because in the silence that follows with Vespera curled at your feet, you understand something else. Some trials don't need judges, only witnesses, and you're finally ready to watch with open eyes. The first frost kisses the windows like an old friend returning from far away. It doesn't bite, just whispers. A soft, silver reminder that change is always coming, even when everything feels still. You light your hearth a little earlier now, wrap your coat a little tighter, and always, always check beneath the blanket before sitting down, because Vespera will already be there. She's slower in the cold, but no less regal. When she walks through the village, now children part like reeds in a stream. One boy claims she taught him how to listen to clouds. Another swears she guards the border between dreams and waking. No one disagrees. You pass the square and see the latest addition, a stone bench carved with paw prints' names and a simple inscription. They judged in silence. We remember in warmth. People come from far and wide to sit there, not to speak, not to perform, just to be still. Sometimes a cat joins them, curling up beside their boots. If that happens, the visitor stays longer. Some begin bringing stories, tales from their towns, their villages, their cities. One woman says her grandmother spoke of a trial where a cat was accused of listening too closely to prayers. Did she, someone asks. The woman shrugs. Wouldn't you laughter, not scorn, follows. The village now keeps a book of names not for judgments, but for memory. A cat seen chasing a ribbon, another caught carrying a sock up a chimney, one found curled beside a sleeping child who woke with fewer nightmares. Each name is written with care, ink dried beside soft purrs. Historians may never read this book, but the village does. Sometimes late into the night, someone will knock on your door, quiet, hesitant. You open it to find a stranger holding a cat. They told me they say that here. It's different. You nod, make space, set down a bowl, show them the bench, the fire, the path where paw prints still trail behind every lesson you didn't know you were learning. That night you wake to hear bells, not church bells, not warning, just soft chimes outside the window. You rise and open it. The black lipper is there again, older now, fur dusted with white like ash that never burned. He stands on the roof across the way, staring not at you, but at the stars. He doesn't blink, he doesn't move, and then in a single impossible leap, he vanishes into the dark. You don't chase him, you don't need to, because you understand now, not all watchers need to be seen. Some simply arrive to make sure you still remember. In the morning, frost paints the paw prints he left behind, and you trace each one with your finger. Snow comes softly that year. No storms, no shrieking winds, just the quiet hush of white gathering on rooftops, turning the village into a sleeping sketch. Paths vanish beneath powder. Footsteps muffle, even voices become lower, like everyone is trying not to wake something holy. The cats adore it. They leap through drifts like hunters, nap in sunbeams that stretch across floors like warm silk. You often find Vespra perched on the sill, watching snowflakes fall with a kind of ancient patience, as though she's remembering all the winters that came before this one and all the ones you've forgotten. The village holds a gathering on the solstice. No sermon, no decree, just candles lined along every doorstep, small fires in every square, bowls set out not just for the cats, but for birds, for foxes, for whatever else still braves the hush of winter. A few guests from other towns join. One brings a carved figure of a cat carrying a scroll. They place it at the well. The base reads, "Witness to our silence, guardian of our return." You sit beside it with a mug of warm cider. Vespra climbs into your lap, heavier now, but no less precise. Her fur smells like wood smoke and something colder, something older. The storyteller, a traveling man, with a voice like honey left near the fire too long, begins a tale. A new one made from old pieces, about a village that forgot kindness and the cats who left, about the hunger that followed and the dreams that turned bitter, about the long silence and the return. But he changes the ending. In this version, the villagers apologize, not in words, but in deeds. They wait. They leave out food. They speak more softly, listen more closely. And when the cats return, they are not asked to forgive. They are simply offered a seat by the fire. The tale ends, and no one claps, not out of disapproval, but out of reverence, because everyone knows the story is real. Maybe not in every detail, maybe not exactly as told, but real in its bones. Historians still debate whether animal trials were more spectacle than belief, more political theater than spiritual panic. But here in this snow-dusted square, you know it was never about cats or demons or curses. It was about fear. Fear of what we can't control. Fear of silence. Fear of eyes in the dark that don't blink when we expect them to. But the lesson isn't fear. It's what came after. Redemption not by fire, but by stillness, by time, by choosing not to repeat what was easy, by building something gentler. The children now write their own books. One is called The Paw Print Archives. Another is a picture story why the cats left and why they came back. The drawings are crude but earnest. In every one the cats are drawn large, tall as houses, watching. One child explains, "They were always big, we just didn't see it." You nod, because once you didn't either. You walk the quiet path home that night, snow crunching beneath your boots. The lanterns behind you flicker in the dark, casting long shadows of curling tails and alert ears. Above the stars blink like slow cat eyes. Vespra is already inside when you return. She's claimed your chair again. You sit on the floor. She blinks once, allows it, and as you settle into the hush of winter, the fire crackling low, you understand the shape of this strange, long story. It was never about trials. It was about learning to stop them. The thaw arrives slowly. Like a soft awakening, the ice melts from the river's edge, and the crocuses push their purple heads through the thawing earth. The village stirs in kind. Doors open wider. Smiles come easier. The air carries the scent of wet stone and fresh bread. And the cats, they're everywhere. Kittens dart through gardens. Old cats lounge on fences. Vespra has taken to wandering the lanes at dusk tail high, and eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. You follow her one evening and see her pause by a hollow tree. There nestled in moss is a small litter of newborns. She sits nearby, watchful and silent. No one disturbs the nest. The village has learned that some things are better left alone, that curiosity can be kind, that watchfulness does not demand interference. At the square, a new tradition has blossomed, a whiskers feast. Each family leaves out a small bowl of cream, a dish of fish scraps, or a piece of warm bread. It's not just for the cats anymore. It's for the stories they carry, the silence they keep, the mysteries they hold. One night, you overhear a conversation between two elders. "Remember when we feared the purr?" one says, chuckling softly. The other nods. "Yes, now it's the sweetest sound in the village." The scholar's book has become a treasured item. Copies are passed from hand to hand, read aloud by firesides, and cited during lessons. The children learn the history not to fear but to understand, to remember. There's talk of a monument, a stone carving near the chapel depicting a cat beside a book tail curled around a quill. You volunteer to help, because this is no longer just about cats. It's about memory, about healing, about the strange way history curves sometimes away from fire and fury, and sometimes toward purring and peace. That night, as you sit by the fire, Vesper jumps into your lap. She's older now, her fur flecked with silver. Her eyes still gleam with that familiar mystery. You stroke her gently and wonder what stories she might tell if only she could speak. The wind whispers outside. The stars blink softly, and somewhere in the night a cat's meow breaks the silence. Not accusing, not pleading, just watching, just present or just home. The village is quieter today, but not because of fear. It's the kind of quiet that comes with understanding, like the soft hush after a story's been told and the listeners are left to ponder. Children gather by the well, whispering tales of brave cats who outwitted storms, and elders nod with knowing smiles. Vespra moves among them, a silent sentinel, no longer a mystery, but a guardian. A traveling minstrel arrives carrying a lute and a bundle of songs. He weaves tales of cats who walked with kings, who guarded libraries, and who bore witness to the turning of ages. His melodies ripple through the square, and even the hardest faces soften. The scholar's book has spread far beyond your village now. In distant towns, people read it by candlelight, learning lessons once burned into ashes. You often think about those early trials, the fire, the silence, the fear. How easily they could have ended the story. But the story continued, because cats don't just watch, they wait, they forgive, they return. One crisp evening, you find Vespra perched on the chapel roof, gazing at the stars. You join her. Together, you watch the sky, quiet and still, and you feel the weight of everything that came before and the lightness of everything still to come. A soft breeze stirs the leaves, and in that moment you understand. The trials were never about cats. They were about us, about our fears, our choices, our capacity to change. And as the stars wheel overhead, you close your eyes, letting the night carry you into dreams where every paw step is a promise of peace. The village wakes to birdsong that feels almost like a celebration. Winter has loosened its grip, and the first warm days invite windows to open wide, letting in sunbeams that catch floating dust like tiny golden spirits. You find yourself lingering longer in the square, watching life bloom in slow motion. Cats are everywhere, of course, some with fur mottled like autumn leaves, others sleek and black as moonlight. They weave through legs, curl in baskets, and even join the gatherings, with a casual authority that no one questions anymore. Vespra is quieter these days, less of a presence, more of a comforting shadow. She still curls by your hearth, but often slips out at dusk, chasing something only she can see. The villagers have started sharing stories again, not stories of fear or judgment, but of kindness and courage. One elder recounts how a cat saved a child from a snake bite by alerting the household. Another tells of a tabby who guarded the granary against rats, her claws sharp as justice. Children listen wide-eyed and laugh. They even act out the tales, mimicking cat prowls and purrs, their voices light and free. The scholar visits now and then, his hair grayer, his notes full of these new stories. He says, "You have become keepers of a living history, not bound in books alone, but in hearts." You nod, feeling the truth in his words. At night you sit beneath the stars with Vespra beside you. You think about the trials, the fires, the silence, and all that came after. You realize the story isn't just about the cats. It's about the village, about forgiveness, about the fragile, fierce hope that comes when fear is met with patience. And as the moon rises, casting silver light over sleeping rooftops, you hear a soft meow, a reminder that some watchers never leave. They simply wait for you to remember. The market day arrives with a gentle buzz. Stalls brim with late summer fruit, woven baskets, and the scent of fresh herbs. Children dart between legs, laughter spilling like warm honey. The village feels alive, breathing easy for the first time in what feels like forever. Cats patrol their usual haunts, not with suspicion, but with quiet dignity. You see one perched atop a barrel, sunning itself like a royal sentinel. Another stalks the shadows near the bakery eyes, glinting with playful cunning. Vespra weaves through the crowd tail high, accepting strokes and whispers of affection. You notice something new, a small wooden box placed near the well, adorned with a carved cat's head and a slot for coins. A collection for the village cats. You're told to buy fish milk and blankets for the coming cold. A tradition born of gratitude. The priest, now more a gentle presence than a stern voice, offers blessings to the cats during morning prayers. His tone is soft, almost reverent. They are our companions, he says, our teachers in patience and grace. You smile at that. The scholar's latest writings speak of transformation, not just in laws or beliefs, but in hearts. How a village once consumed by fear learned to live beside what it didn't understand. How silence turned to song. You find yourself telling stories now of the cats who watched, who waited, who never gave up. Stories passed around fires, shared with children who'll grow up never knowing the fear, only the warmth. One evening, you walk through the fields, Vespra padding silently beside you. The sky burns with sunset colors deep and rich. A breeze carries the scent of earth and hope. You pause watching a cat leap effortlessly over a stone wall, tail flicking like a question mark. It looks back, eyes bright, and you know without words that the story isn't over. It's just beginning. The leaves turn crimson and gold, and the village prepares for the harvest festival. This year, the celebration is brighter, filled with songs and laughter that seem to rise above the hills themselves. Tables groan with fruit bread and freshly brewed cider. Children dart between legs, their cheeks rosy and eyes sparkling. Cats are woven into the festivities. There's a parade of felines, each adorned with ribbons, and bells paraded through the streets to the cheers of villagers. Vespra leads the way, regal and unbothered, her tail high like a banner. The mayor raises a glass and offers a toast to the cats who stayed, who watched, and who taught us to see. The crowd erupts in cheers. Later, by the firelight, the scribe reads aloud from his book. Tales of trials past, but also of hope, forgiveness, and renewal. He speaks of the village as a living story, one that grows and changes with every passing season. You listen, feeling the weight and the lightness of the moment. As the festival winds down, you find yourself alone in the square. The stars peek out, blinking slowly, as if watching too. A soft purring hums at your feet. Vespra curls beside you, warm and content. You lean back and watch the night sky, and for the first time, you feel at peace. Winter's grip loosens, and with it comes a quiet renewal. The village breathes anew beneath soft blankets of snow, melting into hopeful streams. Footsteps leave fresh prints on the thawed earth, and the scent of pine and wood smoke mingles with the crisp air. Cats, ever patient, claim their spaces again, not as intruders, but as familiar companions. You see them stretched on sunny window ledges, pawing gently at swirling leaves, or nestled beside hearth fires, purring a rhythm as old as time. Vespra, her fur now touched with silver strands, remains your steady shadow. She watches as children learn to tread lightly around her, their fingers gentle and curious. She teaches them the language of silence, the grace of patience. The village elders speak less of trials and more of lessons, of balance restored, trust rebuilt. A new book arrives at the library penned by the scholar's granddaughter. It tells of the village's journey from fear to understanding, from fire to forgiveness. Its pages are filled with sketches of cats, paw prints, and hearts. You find a copy and read it by candlelight, each word a balm. The priest, once stern, now smiles softly as he watches a tabby weave through pews during service. Grace, he murmurs, comes in many forms. You smile back. Outside, the night deepens, stars shimmering like scattered gems. And in the hush, a cat's gentle meow lingers, a song of endurance, of quiet strength. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of history soften, because some stories don't end with a verdict. They end with a purr. Spring returns gently, like a whispered promise. The village awakens alive with blooms and songbirds. Light filters through budding branches, casting dappled patterns on worn stones. The scent of fresh earth and blooming flowers fills the air. Cats patrol the gardens and fields, their sleek forms moving effortlessly between shadow and sunlight. Kittens tumble in the grass, their playful chirps blending with the buzz of bees. Vespra watches over them all, her gaze steady and knowing. You stroll through the square and see a new addition, a carved wooden bench adorned with paw prints, and the names of cats long gone but never forgotten. Children gather there to listen as the elders tell stories of Miette Moonpaw and Gaston cats who endured trials and taught lessons of resilience. The priest joins them occasionally, his voice soft and reflective, sharing words of compassion and understanding. The village has transformed. Fear has given way to reverence, suspicion to acceptance. You sit beside Vespra, beneath the blossoming trees, feeling the gentle pulse of life around you. And you know the story continues not with flames or fear, but with quiet grace. A cat's soft purr is the truest echo of history's beating heart. Summer warmth settles over the village like a familiar blanket. The air hums with the songs of cicadas and the laughter of children chasing butterflies. Gardens overflow with herbs and flowers, their colors vivid against the stone and timber of homes. Cats have become woven into the very fabric of daily life, chasing sunbeams, keeping watch from fence posts, curling into laps during evening meals. You see Vespra perched near the chapel door, her eyes half closed in contentment, a living symbol of the peace hard won. At the marketplace, a small group gathers around a storyteller who spins tales of cats in distant lands, guardians of temples, companions of scholars, silent witnesses to history. You listen fascinated as the stories weave together threads of myth and reality, fear and friendship. The village has grown quiet, but alive, a place where lessons of the past nurture hope for the future. And you think of all the cats who came before, the ones who faced fire and judgment, who waited in silence and returned with quiet strength. You smile knowing their paws have left marks not only on paths but on hearts. That night, as you sit beneath a sky thick with stars, Vespra curls beside you. Her purring fills the room, a soft rhythm of memory and grace, and you finally understand that some stories are never truly over. They simply continue like the soft patter of paws on stone. The air turns crisp, signaling the approach of autumn once again. Leaves begin to drift down like golden whispers, carpeting the village paths with color and quiet. The scent of wood smoke mingles with ripening apples, and the villagers prepare for the harvest with calm excitement. Cats prowl the orchards and barnyards, their eyes gleaming with the wisdom of many seasons. Kittens play among the fallen leaves, their joyful chirps a cheerful counterpoint to the rustling trees. You find Vespra watching the sunset from a rooftop perch silhouetted against the amber sky, a silent guardian of the village's memories. At the square, a new tradition unfolds, a night of stories and songs dedicated to the cats who shaped the village's history. Villagers gather around fires, sharing tales passed down from elders and children alike. The stories speak of courage, patience, and the power of quiet resilience. They speak of trials endured and the gentle triumph of understanding over fear. You listen heartful as the community comes together to honor not only the cats, but the journey they all share. The priest offers a blessing for peace and compassion, his voice steady and warm. The night sky above sparkles with stars, as if the cats themselves are watching from the heavens. You close your eyes, feeling the deep connection that binds the village, its people, and the silent paws that walk beside them. And in that moment, you know the story will continue softly, surely like a cat's purr in the night. The final leaf falls in silence. Winter returns with gentle snow blanketing the village in soft white calm. The air is still, the world hushed under the weight of frost and memory. The village rests, wrapped in warmth and quiet reflection. Cats find refuge in cozy corners, by firesides beneath window ledges, curled in soft blankets. Vespra sleeps deeply now, a steady presence at your side, her breathing slow and sure. The villagers gather one last time by the ancient oak in the square, a circle of warmth against the cold. Stories are shared tales of trials, forgiveness, and the enduring bond between human and feline. You watch as a child places a small wooden cat at the tree's base, a symbol of peace and remembrance. The priest speaks softly, his voice, a gentle benediction. May we always remember the lessons of silence and the strength of patience. The scholar's granddaughter reads from the village's book of memories, her words weaving past and present into a tapestry of hope. As night deepens, you find yourself alone with Vespra beneath the stars. She looks up at you, eyes shining with ancient knowing. You reach out, and she presses her head against your hand, a silent promise, a shared understanding. The trials are over. The story rests, but the echoes remain in paw prints, on stone, in whispered tales, in the quiet purrs that fill the night. And as you close your eyes, the village breathes as one at peace, watchful and forever changed.